These rooms that overlook the pool, the 1960s, I think it's buildings 4 and 5, are newly refurbished. And so I assume that the pillows, the mattresses, everything is brand new. And so it was really comfortable. So I'm going to start in the Classic Hall. You saw a little bit of that in my room tour video. And then we're going to walk around the grounds decade by decade and show you what everything looks like. So this is the start. And you can see that is the main building. That's where you would enter the grounds. This is the Classic Hall. So even at 8 o'clock in the morning, a lot of hustle and bustle. As we enter, there's a restroom area and a really big game room. Wow, you can get everything here. Look at this, you can get, what is recharge? I thought that this was going to be the charging sticks, but this is just to recharge your credits. You can get a relaxing massage. You have an air hockey table. Giant Space Invaders. I've seen these before. I think these things are very cool. A really nice take on a 1970s or 1980s game. So as we go out, you can see the registration area here. And we looked at this in my room tour video. I will give you a brief view of this right now. But if you want to see more, you can go look at that video. So here we are going to enter everything hot. Shopping and dining. So this is your gift store. This is where you'll get your sundries. And this is also where you're going to find the dining. When I got in about 11 o'clock last night, I did have an opportunity to grab something to eat because at least the pizza end stays open until midnight. Wow. Lots and lots of different mugs here. Here's a Mad Hatter mug, $19.99. We have travel mugs, Mickey's Swell Coffee, also $19.99. A lot of things trying to stay in keeping with the decades, the 1970s, Tea Party. And they even have Mickey's coffee, Mickey's flavored coffees. And depending on what you order, there are different prices. Different beach towels. I am noticing lately they have a lot of buy two deals. I saw that in the park and I'm seeing that here. This is kind of nice. You can buy 2 beach towels for $22. Not bad for themed beach towels. A lot of the same things that you might see in the park. Look at this, they have some televisions through the decades. And the theme continues, keep on trucking from the 70s. Totally awesome, I suppose, from the 90s. Way out from the 50s. Once again, all of these plushies are $20 each when you buy 2, otherwise they're $24.95. And look at this, you can even buy liquor. So that was the gift shop side, and over here tends to be more the apparel side. We have hats. How much are the hats? Let's see a price on the hat. There they are. They're priced by color. And the sundries. You can get the Disney product line here. Now I wonder if this is why they don't put the individual soap bars and they have the dispensers instead. Because people take them home and they figure we might as well sell them. Let's see what they have for food in the morning. We have the penny press for Pop Century. Except they have the princesses. That really isn't Pop Century, is it? There's our dining areas. Look at that fire oven. You can get different breakfasts, waffles, complete meals, omelets, pizza. If you're on the dining plan, here is a quick service menu. And it's set up the same as the Art of Animation. You go to your different station and then you pay for it on the way out. So this is the waffle station. This looks like the pancake and biscuit and gravy fried chicken station. They have grab and go. There's some things like you can buy milk, you can buy ready-made sandwiches, donuts in the morning. You can even buy cold cereal. This looks like your larger breakfasts and sandwiches. French toast, the bounty platter, the breakfast bread bowl. Here's your made-to-order omelets. And they have fresh fruit. We have beverage stations. It's probably the wrong time of the day to do this because everybody is in here trying to get their breakfast. It's hard to do this without bumping into people. We're going to head out now and we're going to look at some of the other decades. So coming out of the Classic Hall, this is where you can get things like temporary tattoos and hair braiding and that sort of thing. And as we look at the other side, you're going to see a refreshment stand. That's not open right now. It's only 8 o'clock in the morning. But later in the day, there's a lot of activity around here. So as you leave the Classic Hall, go down the stairs, you can turn left or right. Either way will take you into the 1960s area. And here is a 1960s decade. You can see it's heavy, it's groovy. And what we're going to do is walk around. You can see all of the rooms open up to the common pool area, and this is the main pool. And it really is nice. Be aware that all of these rooms open up into that area, so you do have people walking past your room pretty consistently. All right, let's take a look. It does surround the pool. So you can see it's a nice big pool. It's kind of shaped roughly like a 1960s flower. Let's take a look over there. You see some of the toys, some Play-Doh. I guess those are supposed to be 1960s type people dancing. Over on this side, as you saw in my previous video, Baloo and Mowgli. Really big sculptures. I would expect to see this more at the Art of Animation across, I believe they call it Hourglass Lagoon or Hourglass Lake. But it really is more of the same. So we'll take a walk around. And here are our two Duncan yo-yos. As I said, the staircases are inside those. There's one on each end of the building, both on this end and on the opposite end. You saw I was inside one. Now you can see this runs right down the center of this particular resort. Down at the end you see the Classic Hall. And as I turn in the opposite direction, there's my yo-yo. You see the bridge going across Hourglass Lagoon. And that heads to the Art of Animation. And if you watch my Art of Animation video, you can see I kind of started halfway across this bridge. And this is where I would have ended up had I crossed all the way over. So to give you an idea where we are, right here is Classic Hall. We just came down the 1960s. We came down this side, and now we're standing on the edge of the bridge that would take us into the Art of Animation. So what we're going to do now is we're going to come back around the other side, and then we'll go and visit 50s, 60s, 70s. You know, even with the renovation and the construction that's going on, I found it to be very quiet. Of course, I wasn't hanging around here a lot during the daytime yesterday, but I was here some of the day, and I didn't hear a lot of noise, and it was certainly very quiet in the room. I heard a little bit of water running. You know, someone might have been using the bathroom in an adjoining room, but aside from that, I had a great night's sleep, and I found it to be very quiet. Now coming up the other side of the 1960s decade, very similar to what we saw over there. There's a big bamboo again. Here's our giant Play-Doh tin. And once again, this is massive. It's about a 4-story sculpture. So here's a snack bar room. And on either side, with your Magic Band, you can get into restrooms if you're at the pool area. And you can also have your laundry done, which I think is really nice that they have laundry facilities for the guests. Now right over there you can see the bowling pin from the 1950s. So looking at the 1950s area, we're going to start here. Everything is going to start in the Classic Hall area. And we're going to come right down and go around their very interesting bowling pin shaped pool and work our way right around. And you can see the buildings all have themes. We have Tramp, we have Lady, we have, not even sure what that is, Play-Doh, Baloo and Mowgli. So they all have the different themes. Now we're going to take a look at the 1950 section of Pop Century. And in here, our staircases are encased by giant bowling pins. So you saw in my area, which was 1960s, it was Duncan Yo-Yos, and this has giant bowling pins. And as we walk around, you can see we still have the dancers, but this time they look more like they're at a sock hop. Now the 1950s area has a lot more foliage than where I'm staying over at the 1960s. It doesn't have the big pool area in the center. It does have a pool, you'll see in a minute. But there are a lot more trees. So if that's what you like to see when you look out your window or gaze out over your railing in the morning, this might be a good building to ask for. It says up there, way, way out. And you can see record albums and you can see people dancing. I guess those are transistor radios, aren't they, on the building? And there's Lady. Once again, we're looking at a 3 or 4 story tall structure. And just across from Lady, there's Tramp. So I'm not sure what this building is. It's probably a grounds building or something. It doesn't appear to be anything that is for guest use. It looks like Lady's doghouse though, doesn't it? Or Tramp's doghouse. And over here you see the pool. In keeping with the bowling theme, I don't know if those bowling balls couldn't possibly be attached, could they? You think they're floating balls? I'll bet that's what they are. I'll bet those are floating toys. And the pool itself is shaped like a bowling pin. And there you can see it says sock hop, bebop, some of the terms that we associate with 1960s. Okay, now I see what that was from the map. It's a jukebox. When I was looking at that on the map, I wasn't sure what that was, but now I see that it is a giant jukebox. And there's a lot of little squirrels. You see that little guy down there? See him? I didn't notice it so much in the other section where I was staying, but there's an awful lot of squirrels here, and I suppose because there's a lot more foliage and vegetation here. So we're going to continue on around the pool. And it looks like most of these areas are set up very similarly. The buildings go around the pool, and you can either have a pool view or you can have a view of whatever's on the other side. Some cases that might be a parking lot, some cases that might be the lake looking over at the Art of Animation. But behind me you see once again we do have laundry facilities here in the 1950s area. This building also has restrooms that once again you can access with your Magic Band. And look at that, they're bowling shoes on the side of that building. So here is our giant jukebox. And once again, Art of Animation across the lagoon. I said it when we were at Art of Animation, and I know I keep repeating it, but I am so impressed with these sculptures. Just the size, they are so massive. It's almost hard to believe unless you're standing here looking at them. It really makes the place fun. So I know I'm taking the decades a little out of order because I started in the center, but from what I've seen already, it looks like the layout of every decade is roughly the same. You're going to have a swimming pool, a themed swimming pool in the middle, with the buildings that have the open access from your rooms, and they look down either over the center or to the outside. And by looking at the map, when you're on the phone making your reservation, you can get a pretty good idea of what you'll be looking at from the room that you are assigned to the room you choose. And by the way, I think I paid about $200 for 2 nights. I booked this at the very last minute. I think to be on property with the quality of room that I got, that was a slight upgrade. I think I paid $10 or $20 more because those rooms were renovated. But I think that was a really good rate to have all the amenities, the transportation, have it all included in your stay. And here at the end of the Classic Hall, this is near the 1950s, and they do have airline check-in. So if you need to check in for your airline, you can do that. And the big numbers on the side of the building designate the decade. It does progress in order, starting with the 50s on one side and all the way up to the 90s on the other. And to put these numbers in perspective, you can see how big they are compared to the people walking by. They're about a story and a half. We move into the 70s, and I don't know if Goofy there with the surfboard is supposed to be the 60s or the 70s. I suppose that sort of fits more with the 1960s theme. Now this is wild. Is that a real Corvette, or is that just a... This is a real Corvette. Wow. This is really something. This is an actual Corvette. Can you imagine buying a Corvette just for decoration? Now I don't want to get crazy with this. Some of you may know that I own a classic Corvette, and I just love them. And this is pretty exciting for me to see a real Corvette being used as a prop. This is absolutely amazing. I'm going to pull way back so you can see it in context and how it is sort of the decoration for the entry to the 1960s. So there you can see the whole thing in context and how this really frames the entrance to the 1960s area. But as I turn around, we're entering the 1970s, which does not have a Corvette. So once again, in keeping with the theme of dancing, we have mood rings, we have platform shoes. Same thing on the other side. It's really a busy time. I'm trying to avoid people, not get in their way. And as we enter the 1970s, it's not raining, but there's a lot of dew on the trees, and it's all dropping all over my head. Look at this, a giant foosball land. And there's nothing to do here other than look at it, but you can see how big they are in relationship to the people. And this is flanked on either side by the giant Mickey Mouse telephone. And opposite that, we'll get a better view, but there's a giant big wheel. And I love how they did this. They made the big wheel like it's weathered, like it's been sitting outside, like an irresponsible child didn't take it in, and so it got kind of beat up and old. Or maybe it's like they found it at an antique store somewhere. That's very cool. I think it's an interesting choice they made to make this thing look weathered. But as you can see, the rooms are all uniform. They're the same things that you saw in the 50s and 60s. They all look out onto this courtyard area. Discotheque. I never remember people referring to it as discotheque. It was always just disco. Boogie Down. Classic 70s. And then back over here, once again we see the giant Mickey telephone. And they have a little rest area here, but it's set up like a game of Twister. And I guess it's not a rest area. You can really play the game of Twister. So I would have to put my left hand on red. Let's do that. And that's all you're going to see. I'm not going to play a game of Twister all by myself. I think I would get more strange looks than I'm already getting. I noticed that the 1970s does not have its own swimming pool area. It just has this courtyard. So if you're staying in the 1970s, you'll probably have to go to one of the other pools. And here's the flanks of 70s building. I'm not sure I know exactly what that is. Is that an 8-track tape? I guess it's an 8-track tape. I see a tape sticking out of the side. And over here as well, it's an 8-track tape that the staircase is inside. And here is Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head. I'm kind of surprised to see this over in the 70s area, because I think of Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head as actually being more in the 50s. But I guess they had a resurgence. There's another one of our Disney squirrels. And there we see a giant Rubik's Cube. That's our staircase once again. And let's see where we are here. So there we are in the 1970s. We just walked down there. We looked at the Mickey telephone. We looked at the big wheel. I'm right about here. And I'm looking at the Rubik's Cube as the entry into the 1980s. Now it looks like they share a pool here, the 80s and 90s. As I said, the 70s don't have a pool. The 60s tends to have the main pool, the big pool. Although, when I look at the bowling pin, that seems to be a pretty good sized pool as well. The 90s pool, I don't really know what the theme is supposed to be there. But let's head over in that direction. So as we look at the 1980s, you see we have the Rubik's Cubes. And they serve the same function as the yo-yos back over there in the 60s. They encase the staircase. So some of the themes they looked at were breakdancing, preppy. We see Pac-Man, perhaps that's Mrs. Pac-Man, and we see one of the Pac-Man ghosts there. And the same thing over on this side. And look at this, I see we're coming up to Roger Rabbit. I like Roger Rabbit. I wish Disney would do more with him. I think that it was a great concept. Robert Zemeckis did a great job with that film with the technology of the time. And I recently watched it and it holds up really well. If you haven't seen Roger Rabbit in a while, I think you should have another look at it. Once again, so impressive, the size of these structures. About 4 stories tall. And this whole section looks kind of like Toontown. Over there you see a Walkman. And down here, this is a giant keyboard. So although it didn't make sense to me when I was looking at the map, I suppose this is supposed to be a computer screen. So we have a keyboard, and the square pool is a computer screen. It's radical to the max. You know, based on what I'm seeing here, they couldn't come up with that many great ideas. It makes me wonder, were the 80s that boring? All they can come up with is a floppy disk. We have inline skates. I think we might be getting into the 90s here. And it looks like the entrance to this building is a giant laptop computer. Look at that. You know, it occurs to me, and I'm surprised it didn't occur to Disney, or maybe it did, but it would just be too expensive, that this could actually be a functional sign, just like, you know, sporting events, those types of signs. And this could really be displaying different things. It could be advertising the park, talking about what's going on that day, talking about the resort, but they didn't do it. Just another one of those things that I thought would be really, really neat to see. On this end of the pool, they have joysticks. And you can kind of see as the 70s and 80s, or I guess it's the 80s, right? As the 80s kind of converge, the buildings kind of close in, and it gives a really nice framing to the whole pool area. We start over there, radical to the max. There you can see Roger Rabbit in between the two buildings. Totally awesome. Psych. We move over to this side. There's our Walkman. Preppy yuppies for sure. And that's our pool area for the 80s and 90s. Now, just recently, Disney instituted a pay parking system. It used to be that guests at the hotel, and this is real recently, like this month, April of 2018, the parking for guests used to be free. Now there is a fee. So think about that, because I was going to stay off grounds. I'm only here for a couple days. I actually check into the Contemporary in about 3 days from now. So I was going to stay off grounds because I was only going to be at a different hotel for 2 days. But if I was at a different hotel, I would need a car to get around. So I'd have to pay for a rental car. I would have to pay for parking. I do have an annual pass, so I get free parking at the parks. But if I rented a car, I would need parking, at least if I came here. When I found out it was only $200 a day to stay at this resort, that was a steal. If I go to, you know, any place like a Hampton Inn, I'll pay $140, $150 or more. Plus, I would have to have my rental car. Here, I took Disney's Magical Express. I paid $200. I get all the amenities of a Disney hotel. Plus, I get to use their transportation system, so that cost to park and rent a car didn't have it anymore. I would say that it was worth the extra $10 or $20, whatever it was, to stay at the newly renovated rooms in the 1970s area. That was, it's a nicer location, I believe. I think it's close to the hall where you have breakfast and shopping. It's close to check-in. I personally think that it's themed a little better, but that's personal preference. But I think it was well worth it. I think that this resort, I believe they call them value resorts, are really nice. And like I said, I'll be checking into the Contemporary, which is far more expensive, but of course it has far more benefits and perks. One of those being that it's on the monorail track. But this is not bad. And I think I could, in good conscience, recommend the Pop Century Resort. But really look over the rooms, make sure that you are getting what you want. Take a good look at the map, take a good look at the surroundings, know what's going on. Right now there's construction, so be aware of construction, parking fees, all of that, and make some good decisions. Look at this. Look at somebody put in their window. They must have bought this at the park, and so they decided to put that in the window for everybody to enjoy. And now it's starting to get warm. It's not a hot day, but it is starting to warm up. And I've been walking at a pretty brisk pace here. I'm starting to get a little sweat on the forehead. I think it's time for me to go grab a cold drink, maybe get some orange juice, maybe grab a donut or something. I'm not a big breakfast guy, but they say it's the most important meal of the day, right? So I think I'm gonna go and grab something to eat, and then I'll start my day somewhere at Walt Disney World. We'll see where life takes me. So I hope you enjoyed my tour of the Pop Century Resort. I hope this isn't too windy for you. I apologize if it is. I certainly am having a good time staying here. If you have any questions, leave them down below. You know, I love it when you comment, when you share, when you give me the thumbs up, and especially when you subscribe. I'm Mark with the Average Me channel.